We didn't have any like systems or processes back in the old days.
Okay, so you want to go down that road.
No, I really don't.
I remember walking into this building, seeing a box that said Shorewood on it on a Sunday morning, right? And
Somebody forgot to pick up their...
Maybe.
Yeah.
No one really knew. And so what would I do? I would take that box because I was going to Shorewood. So I'd take that box and bring it to Shorewood.
Yeah.
And then the person who came to the yellow box looking for the Shorewood box
Could not find it.
could not find it because I took it. And that's when we invented the courier team.
Oh, yeah. Those systems. I used to always have to take the Saturday night DVD down to John Cisnewski, and we would meet in the parking lot of the 7-Eleven. I would be sitting in my car, and he would back his car in, so drivers to drivers, and we would hand the brown envelope. I always think, someday some cop is going to come here and go, what are you guys doing? What's in the bag?
Okay, you talk about a DVD like that's old, but I used to load up the VCR in the van that Troy McMahon would take to Romeoville.
I remember the van.
And I had to make sure.
Yeah.
And so sometimes I'd be working on these videos and getting master. As long as I got
Before the van left.
there before the van left, that's all that mattered.
Brother, I was doing Kid City stuff on that van. I had to load all the Kid City stuff on that van.
Oh, do you remember the chicken truck?
No.
Did you have the chicken truck?
I don't think so.
Oh gosh, well then good. That predates.
No.
Okay, all right. Well, that was fun. Let's start this podcast. You ready?
Yes.
All right. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Big Idea Podcast. I'm Eric Bramlett. I am joined by
Tammy Melchien.
How you doing today, Tammy?
Pretty good. We hope we don't have Michael today, so
This is true. We are
hopefully we're in the shot.
we are cinematographer-less, is a way of describing it. But that's not going to stop us from communicating what we need to
Yes.
communicate.
We're just flying blind right now. though.
Yeah, we see the red button. We trust that it means that it's recording. That's exciting. We are talking about a new series. This is a little bit of a different move for us than years past as it relates to a series before a big Invite and Include fall series. And so it's actually a 6-week series.
Which we're so used to these long
I know.
series now.
Why is it so short is what I'm saying. Why is it only 6 weeks? But it is how to bless your neighbor. And bless, of course, is in all caps because we are focusing in on the bless strategy and the idea of taking each one of those letters and denoting a way to
Yes.
bless our neighbors through the bless strategy.
And I mean, I will say that, some of us may think, oh, we talk about bless all the time. We really don't.
Right.
And really, it's been 7 years since we did a whole series unpacking this. And so we've occasionally mentioned all 5 in one talk and breezing over them. But this is going to give us a chance to dig down a little bit deeper into each one of these practices and hopefully help every one of us grow in this as a posture, as a daily practice, and not just a one-time shot thing.
Totally. Yeah, and I think, especially even if we devote an entire one service within a series, you just think about the number of times people go a month and just what it's like to have missed that one
twice,
Sunday.
Right?
I don't attend this church, but if I did, I'd only go 1.2 times a month.
Okay.
So with that in mind, it is good, even if you have heard it before.
So how to bless Eric. That's what we're going to do.
Right, exactly.
To help him find his way back to God.
Because I need it.
All right.
Okay, so week
Let's go.
1, we're starting. It's a little bit of an overview week.
Yes.
Called simply the Jesus Mission.
The Jesus Mission.
Where are we headed?
I wonder if they can hear all that clapping.
Oh, I don't know. You might be hearing some
Okay.
applause. It's just only because we're celebrating a wedding.
And people love this podcast.
And people love this podcast.
So
They're huge fans.
week 1 is an overview of the Jesus Mission, and so it's going to set the course for this entire series. Again, we can't assume that probably more people know our mission statement, helping people find their way back to God, than can really explain it or really understand what it really means. And so we're going to take this first week to talk about that and to talk about the roots behind this blessing strategy that go all the way back to Genesis 12, when God blesses Abraham to be a blessing. And then we look forward, and Jesus himself, his whole life was an embodiment of him coming to bless the world. And so we see him living out this blessing. And then when we get to to Paul's writings, even Paul talks about how we are all now Abraham's seed, that we are the ones who are now blessed to be a blessing. And so we're going to set up this first week, we'll set up the whole motivation for the whole series of, we are called to be this blessing in the world. But the truth is most of us struggle to know how to do that. And what does it really mean to live that out? And that's where the blessed practices give us such just practical handles for living that out.
That's awesome. So yeah, great overview. We got Old Testament, we got New Testament, all of it kind of coming together into one introduction week. And so then we begin with the rest of the 5 weeks, begin breaking down each of those practices. So the B stands for begin with prayer.
And so, again, each one of these 5 weeks now, we're just going to dig deep into this one. And so beginning with prayer, we'll talk about some of the things that are, I think, prayer is one of those things that we all know we should do, but most of us struggle with, like flossing or exercising.
You bring up flossing. Like I've just started a little bit more regular flossing.
Again, Eric, he's got all of this down.
One of these days I will start coming to this church. It's going to be awesome.
So, so this one is about prayer, and we're going to get people start thinking about, how do you begin through prayer to identify where the people are or where the places that God is calling you to be a blessing. And so, and I think, as teaching team, we're already thinking too, we might want to take some time in the service to actually, practically teach people what it looks like to begin with prayer, but then actually do it together in the service.
I think this one is maybe particularly exciting for me as I think about this journey that we've been on as a church, just kind of the way in which prayer, I think, has, and even, thinking in terms of healing prayer, and just really kind of the spiritual temperature. I think it's going to be really interesting to go back to these practices, having gone through that process and really, I don't know. I think it's going to feel different, and I'm looking forward to that with anticipation.
Very cool.
Week 3 then, listen,
and we are then, the second practice is to truly listen to the people and to the places that we find, and I think when we think about these practices as a whole, but especially when we start thinking about listening, there's both the sense of, God may be calling you to a particular person, particular place, and maybe as we move through these weeks that'll become clear to people, like it's my neighbor Sally, or it's my office, or it's whatever that might be. But also each one of these practices as a posture to go through your day. So we can say, I'm going to try to listen to Eric to really understand and get to know him, but I'm also going to go through my day just listening to who God puts in my path that I could bless. And so we'll talk about how Jesus really had this kind of posture, and you can see there's so many different stories. We may zero in on one, but I think it's seeming more likely we might look at his life as a whole, is how he did that.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and also we might bring in, it's not on the map here, but the Apostle Paul, when he went, when he was kind of going around, he found himself in the city of Athens, and he listened by looking at what was around the town, and he says, I saw that you're very religious, and I saw your statue of unknown God. And so he was listening to a place to see what they needed. So we're going to hopefully equip people to think about how do you attune your ears and your eyes and your heart to listen to the people that you come across and the places where you feel called to know what the real needs are.
I love it. So if we've begun with prayer, we've listened, then next on the list, we eat.
We eat. Where am I? There I am. And again, hopefully you're seeing this thread. Every one of these we think is something that Jesus lived out, and we see him living out. And so eating, it's interesting. We talk about how important eating was in that culture, that eating together was a way to communicate acceptance, and it was a way to build relationship. And the reality is that's still true today. That same thing. When you think about when you sit down to eat with someone, that kind of takes it to a whole nother level of relationship, whether that's even just like eating at a restaurant, but especially when you invite someone into your home or something like that. And so seeing eating as a missional practice. And again, one of the things when we talk about blessed, we talk about it's not necessarily about adding something to your schedule, because we all have, most of us eat 21 meals a week. But it's about how do you begin to include the people that you believe God is calling you to bless into those times of eating.
And I think too, I mean, it's just another affirmation of this process, starting with prayer and moving into listening. It's like you're not going to be ready to make those kind of asks, because those are big. That's a big intimacy, right? To bring somebody into your home or to have that meal together. You're not really going to be ready for that. If you haven't bathed it in prayer, if you haven't really been listening
and getting to know the person.
So,
absolutely.
But awesome. So then we go to the first S, which is serve.
Serve. Yeah. And the idea is if you've been bathing this in prayer and you've been listening to really understand the person and their dreams and their challenges and their needs, you've been building relationships around the table, eating together, you're going to know how to serve that person. And so, serving is, again, something that Jesus modeled. You think of the story of the foot washing there, where, the people that Jesus was called to invest in life. And of course, there were so many people as he went that he blessed, but he really deeply invested in his disciples. And those were the people that he was called, that he was investing in. And so the foot washing story is a beautiful story of where he then washes their feet. But what I think is key is at the end of that, he says, now I've set you an example, do what I have done for you. And again, it's not that there was something magical about foot washing. That was what needed to be done.
Right. That's the thing I love about it. It's not only a symbol, but it's also practical. It's something that was a part of what needed to be done in that moment.
Yeah.
And Jesus' willingness to do that.
Yes.
Speaks volumes.
And you think about it in our lives. So it's, maybe you feel called to bless your neighbor, and they're on vacation, and what about mowing their lawn? Or what about, it's like these practical ways we can know to serve them once we know what's going on in people's lives. It doesn't always have to be, there's this big crisis moment, but it's also just looking for the small ways to bless them as we go through life.
Now you're talking about the neighbor. It made me think about, Ken Pedley is my neighbor to the left. Well, to the right is a neighbor that we are in the process of blessing, and not a Christ follower, but we've begun to explore the pattern of sharing stuff,
yard tools,
and things like that.
Yeah.
And one day Ken and Calvin were there, and they wanted to borrow something from my garage. They're like, "Can we borrow that?" And Calvin was like, "Well, won't that be weird? Eric's not home." And Ken said to him, "Well, the only weird thing would be if you didn't return it." But it's like getting people used to the idea of figuring out what it looks like to meet each other's needs. It's a big deal, and it's something that most people are not familiar with.
And so many times it's like the whole thing about these blessed practices is they're not they are so things that most people don't experience. Most people nowadays don't experience getting invited into someone's house for dinner.
Right.
Most people don't experience someone
right.
Kind of looking to meet needs and stuff like that. And so hopefully over the course of building these relationships, you get to the point where you get the opportunity to share your story. And that's really what the last blessed practices is story.
Week 6, story, not share.
Yes.
Don't be confused by the fact that that's also
There's
an
two
S.
S's.
The S stands for story.
Yeah, and it's a chance for you to share your story and your story of the difference that Jesus has made in your life. And so for this one, of course, Jesus was going around all the time sharing the story.
Right.
But we picked the story of this man born blind that he healed because I think in what the man says, there's just a very simple template there for how to tell your story. Because his story was, I once was blind, but now I see. And so if you think about his story, he had a story before he met Jesus, and then how he encountered Jesus, and then what the result of that was.
Yeah.
I once was blind, and I met Jesus, and now I can see. And so, for each one of us to think, okay, how would I describe that. Before I met Jesus, or maybe before I really, if you grew up in the church, before I really understood what it meant to, what was my life really about? What was I living for? What was I pursuing? What was I chasing? Or what was I struggling with, or whatever? And then how did I come to meet Jesus? How did I find my way back to God? Or how did the light bulb go on for me of what it really means to follow Jesus? And then what's my life been like since? And again, it's not like, oh, so then now all my problems are gone. But it's,
Right.
for me, part of that post life would be like, now I just know that I never walk through anything alone. And that's part of the difference that Jesus makes in my life. And so, helping us just think about what's a simple way for you to be able to tell your story, because as you build these relationships, hopefully you'll have the opportunity to share that story.
Yeah. No, it's great. It's so good. And I think as I'm thinking about this too, I'm already like brainstorming service stuff, but
Imagine that.
I know, but I also, I think it'll be important for us to share the story of the blessed practices, really knowing that this has been a part of our church, that it has a history over the years. What are some of the stories of life change that came out of simply following these practices?
Yeah.
Because I think that they have a track record of really, being in line with Scripture, but then also just practically, like it's a successful strategy in terms of changing the world, and doing so one relationship at a time. And that part I think is really exciting.
Yep.
All right, well, go get them. This gets us all the way up to what we're going to be calling Friend Day. More about that with the next series, but this gets us all the way up to that point. So it's also a great opportunity to invite your friends and prepare for inviting them for the September series. So really good stuff all the way around. Tammy, anything else we're leaving out?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right. So let's go bless our neighbors and using this how-to guide. Thanks, everyone. This has been the Big Idea Podcast. This has been Tammy and Eric, and we're signing off. But I have to walk over and push the button.
Awkward.
Well.